some of you are not really, um, foreign or strangers to kind of the summit here. I see Leon and Isaac have already been part of the plenary sessions. But I'm going to give us a few minutes for us to briefly introduce ourselves. So just quickly about your organization, what you do, then we can take it from there. So perhaps starting with Howell on my farthest left.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Howell Magondo, VP Commercial at OnAfric. I basically look at after global merchants across the globe and uh, business development. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. I think I've been all over your faces this morning, but by way of introduction, my name is Leon Kiptum. Opportunity now to wear the other hat, Senior Vice President, East Africa at Flutterwave, leading the business development efforts, as well as country manager for Kenya.
Thanks. And my name is Isaac Kamuta. I run the payments and cash management business for EcoBank Group, based out of our head office in Lome in Togo. Thank you.
All right. We'll keep it there. It's okay. So my name is Kirill Gertman. I'm a co-founder and CEO at Conduit. We've been operating in the cross-border space, B2B payments, for about 3 years now. I actually started in the United States, Latin America, and Asia, and now expanding into Africa. So pretty new to the continent, but it's been very exciting. It's a very, very happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here. My name is Carol Hane-Waijman. I'm the Kenya country lead for Paystack. Paystack helps businesses take payments from anywhere, from anyone in the world. We are in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Cote d'Ivoire, going into Egypt soon, and excited for the panel today.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining us and for your kindness in sharing your experiences. Now, but we'll start with Leon because you made a very, I would say, emotive remark when post the Secretary General's speech about the hurdles and the hoops and that Africans have to sort of hop around to move money across the continent, right? Talking about currency and all of that. But you know, what have been some of Flutterwave's capabilities in solving for that?
Okay, thank you for that question. So I think the main point, Flutterwave is not a new name when it comes to matters fintech in Africa. I'd easily say that we are now a household name. But what we've really built is a connected payments infrastructure that enables two sets of customers. We have your Flutterwave for Business solution that talks to collections and payouts for our merchants. But one of the things that you'll notice about Flutterwave is that we've given a lot of focus to global merchants that are trying to enter the African market. Hence, the reason why we've taken the time to engage and get licenses across 20 markets in Africa so far, and also gotten licensed from the countries in which we are targeting those merchants. So you'll find we are licensed already in 23 states in America. We are licensed in the UK. We've got a license for Remittance in India, and multiple other markets. And the reason for that is we are asking the question: how do we get these global merchants to expand their presence in Africa? And sell their wares, sell their products, and that's what we are really trying to enable for them. The second piece of that solution is now the traditional remittance through our send up solution. And from a remittance perspective, the question again we are asking ourselves is: we've got your traditional remittance, we've got Africans in other continents, other parts of the world that are looking to move money to their kin back at home, which is really what traditional remittance is. In fact, you could argue that the whole conversation of remittance was anchored on the conversation about black tax. I need to send money back home to support my family, to support the people that are left there because I've gone to hustle in another country, you see. But then what the space we have now found ourselves in is Remit-for-Purpose. And we found ourselves with the discussion of, can I send money to an institution? I want to pay for university. I want to pay for insurance. I want to pay for this. What about institutional remittance, so to speak? So as Flutterwave, those are the things that keep us awake at night, because we are asking the question, how do we solve these solutions for Africans in Africa and Africans in the diaspora as well?
Sure, and you've spoken about Remit-for-Purpose, and one of the key discourse points is usually about costs and safety and speed. How are you actually solving for that as well within kind of the purpose agenda that you have?
Okay, I think the average cost for remittance right now in the world is about what, 7.3%. Yeah. And the UN has been pushing that agenda to, can we reduce this to say like 3%? I think it was even one of the questions that you were going to ask us. And um, what you notice about Flutterwave and how we've done this is that without any extra cost, any extra charges, you will find that we have a fixed fee for up to $20,000 in terms of send money option. So that brings our average to almost the UN average. Of course, you've got those you've got instances where currency fluctuations will affect the remittance itself. But really, what we are trying to do is to say, up to a certain threshold, how easy can we make it for people to move money at an affordable cost?
Fantastic. And you've spoken about merchants, and I just want to pull in Caroline here because you are part of a brand that has been very visible and built a reputation for working with online merchants. How are you working with them to sort of move their money across the globe?
Yeah, absolutely. Like very similar to what Leon was saying, right? Like building that connective tissue and that network in order to be able to um, connect users globally to merchants in Africa. A few different things that we do is um, basically, a lot of it is in partnerships, right? So partnering with folks that want to send money into the country and being able to then disperse the last mile. So what we've done is we've built a really reliable, high, fast network so we can distribute funds almost instantly. In Nigeria, 99% of our transfers are done within a second. So that like speed and reliability is core. The other thing that we've been working a lot on is, as we think about cost and cost of remittance, a lot of it comes down to, FX rates and the ability to source hard currency. And from an FX perspective, a lot of that cost comes in the fact that it's very like it's obfuscated. It's a very, manual trading market right now. And so we like to solve like problems with technology, ensuring that we've built an FX engine that is able to pull in FX rates from multiple partners to be able to um, execute trades with also an in-baked kind of risk premium for volatile and more illiquid currencies as well. And with that level of transparency and automation, you're also going to see costs come down because there's a lot of money being made in like arbitrage, right, of FX rates. And then the last part around, you know, hard currency sourcing, I think that's one of the biggest issues we face with cross-border and remittance. I think that's a problem that we're trying to solve. But I think one of the new technologies that's coming up that I think we can really lean into is going to be around stablecoin and the countries that are opening up those opportunities, like South Africa. I think that's going to be a really interesting space as well to try to get costs down.
Yeah, and you've spoken about partnerships, and in a way also interoperability. And I was just having a small chat with one of the investors in the room, and it was say that, oh, there are quite a number of remittance providers out there in the continent. What is kind of your view with regards to kind of just partnerships within the ecosystem itself, the innovation ecosystem itself within remittances?
Yeah, I think like I'm finding that remittance, competitors are using each other's rails for redundancy, right? So it's like the only way we can do this well is if we partner with multiple folks doing exactly the same thing, to be honest. I don't think it's a it's not a zero-sum game, especially if you're building a network effect. And so I think like we focus on basically like, facilitating payments within countries, and building that infrastructure and then partnering with folks then to move money across countries. And I think that there's a lot of remittance players that are coming in, but they're needing to have, they don't have that necessarily like that depth and that local experience of building infrastructure between banks, mobile money providers, a lot of just like financial institutions. And so that's where we can come in and really partner. And, remittance competitors, they use each other's products in order to create redundancy, to make sure that there's more liquidity for currency in the market. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think everybody wins.
Interesting. And Isaac, you've built a very good brand with regards to kind of just the Pan Africa presence. I mean, growing up, the first thing that came to mind when I had EcoBank was Pan African Bank, right? And but just going back to Caroline's comments around partnerships, I think you are one of the incumbent financial institutions who is actually in the room, who is also looking to partner with innovators, right? So, how's your experience been in sort of just moving money across the continent and also supporting innovators who are also trying to move that money?
Yeah, thanks, and it's great to be in this panel again, just to continue the conversation from where we started. So I think one of the principles of moving money around, which is I think I would just say the ABCs of moving money around, is that you need to be present. You need to have a presence, and I think my colleague talked about the way they have gone around trying to get licenses, because presence then allows you to be legally allowed to do something. So when we talk about as a bank, and I think I must really thank the people that founded EcoBank, because they had that vision, as early as 1985 to on the importance of presence. So they already set up these banking licenses across the 34 countries that we operate in today. If you had to do that today, it would be quite a challenge to go knocking on the doors of central banks for a license. So I think they got that license that allows the bank then to be relevant to clients, including fintechs who want to operate in that market. So when you talk about coverage, I believe coverage is important, and the intention of the bank is to cover the whole of Africa, so that there's no country that is not covered. Now, once you have the banking license that allows you to do payments and move value around, then the next logical thing is, hey, how can I make this license utilized by as many people as possible? And it's not a traditional banking mindset. It's a change of looking at how I have this license that covers the three countries. How can I make it accessible to as many people as possible? But for that to happen, you need to have connectivity. So it's one thing to have a license, it's another thing to make sure that all those licenses are connected. And that is something that I would think EcoBank and the founders had the vision to do that from day one. So they did not get licenses and then each bank is operating like another bank. They got the license, but they ensured that those licenses are interconnected and created what we call our Pan-African switch. So when you hear me talking about being able to move value from one country to another and settle instantly without using anybody's network, or you're using your own internal network, that's what I'm talking about. So the licenses exist and they are connected with one technology, one system, one protocol, one everything. So that's important. Now, once you have got that connectivity, the question then is, then how do you make that available to as many partners as possible? So now with APIs, it's become easier to publish and be able to then offer that to as many providers as possible. So I can give a payment capability to and I'm just using to a Paystack, and they can go and build a business around it without me having to really get involved in what they are doing. They solve a particular segment. I can give that capability to a Flutterwave, and they go and solve a problem in the continent, and they can ride on those licenses without themselves having to go and start getting licenses across those 4 countries. So that's what speaks to the spirit of partnership. So from a banking point of view, we believe we have the license, We have the connectivity, and now it's a question of how can I enable Paystack? How can I enable Flutterwave? How can I enable M-Pesa? How can I enable any other fintech in this room that just wants to access this continent without having to go and do 34 trips? Because I've got the licenses and I want to make them available. So I think that's how we view it, and I think that's how we're going to solve the problems that we have in the continent, so that let me pay the price of getting those licenses. You come and use mine and start building a business. I don't have to repeat the same thing again. So to the extent that we can do that to as many companies and fintechs and anyone else out there, then we think that the bank would be fulfilling its mission, which is why the founders wanted a Pan-African institution, not a country-specific institution.
Interesting. And Hal, you on Africa is perhaps one of the most active kind of M&A players in a way, especially within the innovation space. Now, how does this and other kind of ways of partnering with innovations or just to move remittances or to move money across the continent working for you? What are some of the ways in which On Africa has uniquely positioned itself in this regard?
Great question. So initially, On Afrique's customer base was purely MNOs and banks. So we've managed to do integrations in over 45 countries in Africa right now. And to add on to that, now we've gone ahead and integrated to over 200 banks across the continent. We now have an agency network that spans over 500,000 agents. This is purely to enable for cash in, cash out services across multiple markets. And then now, to just put the cherry on top of this cake, now we recently acquired a card company that now enables us to also offer the capability to do card acquiring and card issuing across the globe. Now, to just buy into what he was saying in terms of what EcoBank is doing on the side of regulation, getting the regulators to give them licenses. So as On Afrique, we are paying the price of doing these multiple integrations across all these countries to create an omni-channel network that will purely provide access to business owners. Because as we all know, one of the critical questions that every business owner has when they're starting a business is, how will I get paid? So as On Afrique, we have built a network that can enable these businesses to be able to collect from multiple channels using a single API integration.
Now, and to you, Kirill, you are perhaps one of the newest kids in the block, and congratulations on your recent round as well. But I seem to understand that you have, some sort of a history and background of operating, money movements within the blockchain sphere. What has been your experience in that regard, and how has that transition been for your product?
Let's see. There you go. So that's right. When we started this company about 3 years ago, we're focused on crypto and decentralized finance. This was back in 2021, and the world was a little bit different back then. Obviously, since then, things have changed pretty dramatically, especially within crypto. So we moved away from that and we moved into B2B cross-border payments, which is what we're doing now. We still have a component of that, integrated into our systems, however, right? And so what we're doing today, and part of what we're doing today, is obviously using stablecoins for international remittances. And when you think about stablecoins, obviously these are US dollar peg stablecoins, so USDC, USDT, things like that. Why do they matter, first of all, right? Why is that important? So we're based in the US. In the US, we kind of have dollars natively. So we basically don't really care. Like there's not a huge advantage in using, USDC or USDT for us. However, in developing markets, right? So we started in Latin America and now coming to Africa, we see very, very similar things here as well. You don't have access to dollars as easily as natively, and you cannot make them as portable as you would like to be. And so what we see, what's happening is that a lot of businesses, obviously depending on local regulation, depending on jurisdiction, but the actual reality on the ground is a lot of individuals and a lot of businesses are using stablecoins. Number one, to hedge against local inflation, right? So it's a dollar equivalent you can hold. But then number two, you can also use them for payments. And then in terms of payments, what's interesting about that is the fact that, if you compare this to Swift, right? You send a Swift, I'm sure we've all done this many, many times. You send a Swift, takes you T plus 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, right? We've seen as much as T plus 7, especially from Africa to places like, for example, Singapore, Hong Kong. The costs are pretty high, right? So you have a transaction fee, you have FX costs. So it's quite frustrating for a lot of folks to be using those, right? And you compare that to a stablecoin. A stablecoin you can send in seconds, costs you cents, right? And you're done. And so that's great. But then you have the challenge of then what, right? Let's say I'm holding Tether or I'm holding USDC. That's great. Again, I can send this around very quickly and very easily. What do I do with that? Can't necessarily pay for my expenses with that, right? Maybe I have rent, maybe I have warehousing costs, pay for goods, pay for services, pay my employees. That just doesn't usually work that way, right? So there's not a native way to do this. And so then what happens is that you still need to go into a local currency, right? Very quickly, very seamlessly, and very easily. So you can actually, again, pay for your expenses, pay for your employees, pay for your goods and services, etc. And so that's what we have built. That's a big part of what we have built is that seamless transition, right? From one local currency to a stable coin and to another local currency on the other end of that. And so that's what we've done in LATAM to a number of currencies over there, Mexican peso, Colombian peso, etc. And that's what we're going to be doing now here in Africa as well. And I think based on what we've seen, just kind of having been operating here for just a few months, there's quite a bit of pent up demand for that.
Yeah, and new markets, new risks as well. And Africa being one of them, where you're looking about multi-currency fluctuation, volatilities. You're talking about liquidity as well. How are you thinking about this?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's also something, to be honest with you, we're kind of thinking through right now. So I don't necessarily have, an answer that I can just kind of pull out of my pocket and say, here's the solution, everybody. We figured this out. I don't think anybody in this room can say this probably, right? So we're still working on this. We're still figuring this out. Um, I think, one of the things that we kind of learned elsewhere is you have to have really strong local partnerships, right? And as ideally, really as localized as possible, right? So local banking in each country, local partners, and those folks that understand the local markets better than us. And also we can build a relationship with them. We can rely on them essentially to help us with, again, Kenyan shilling, Nigerian naira, etc. That are very complicated currency to deal with. And so that's exactly what we're solving for today. So I guess maybe not a super satisfactory answer in the sense that like I don't have a full-on solution, but it's something we're working through.
Fantastic. And over to you, Isaac. I mean, you built this Pan-African brand, um, but let's talk a bit about EcoBank's on rapid transfer system and how it works. So could you please share a bit more about that technology as well?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's talk about rapid transfer because it is not that gets me excited than rapid transfer. So rapid transfer is our answer to actually moving value from one person to another in the continent. And by the way, this capability has been there for the last like about 10, 15 years. I mean, you've seen the picture of that guy running. That's how fast. And the rapid transfer platform leverages that Pan-African switch that I've talked about to enable you to be able to move money from Kenya to Senegal, from Kenya to Togo to Nigeria instantly, right? So, and you can do that on the mobile app. On a mobile app, you just log in, transfer. I do that, just moving money across just instantly. And the beauty with it is that so you can be having, say, Kenya shillings, you'll transfer. The beneficiary will get Uganda shillings on the other side, right? All of it converted, very competitive exchange rates, and it's instant. Then what we have done is we have then connected that capability now to allow you not just to move money to the person to get cash, but you can actually transfer to his mobile wallet. You can then transfer to a bank account across the entire continent. So it leverages on that Pan-African switch to allow us to be able to move money from one country to another instantly. Now, you can argue it is a person-to-person payment, but traders in South Sudan who are using that to do their trade between South Sudan and Kenya, as long as it's below $10,000 and therefore in compliance with regulation. The Uganda-Kenya flows as well. There's a lot of movement between Kenya and Uganda. If you go to Nigeria, between Nigeria and Benin, a lot of cross-border flows moving in there. Traders are using that platform today to be able to move value across those markets. So now, once that capability exists within which we call rapid transfer, it then now allows me to go to a fintech that says they want to play in that person-to-person transfer, and you can ride on that switch to build your own money transfer program. So you can integrate to rapid transfer, and I will give you instantly the ability to send value to people across that 4 countries, and then you can go and sell that solution to your to your market. And that's why we love working with fintechs, because then I can give you the capability. The rapid transfer is our own proprietary platform, but you can plug it into it and give you that capability to be able to move money. And that's why we work with most of the big fintechs here in this room today. We are working very closely with them. So the capability exists not just for EcoBank, but actually we are willing to open it up for anyone to connect into it instantly.
And now that it's rapid, how have you really navigated scenarios where there's currency volatilities in certain markets, and again, the innate risks of operating there? So how have you sort of kept that to that standard, especially in those types of markets?
So that's now the power of a bank behind a platform. So behind rapid transfer is a treasury function that allows us to trade all African currencies. That means if I pick Uganda shillings and I'm picking Kenyan shillings, there's a treasury unit that's actually doing the trading of these currencies and passing that benefit to the person that's doing the remittance. So you don't have to then worry about positions, because at the back of rapid transfer is a treasury unit that trades all African currencies. And not just in the continent, but we have our EcoBank International in Paris. That's actually the one that we task to trade all these currencies across multiple markets. So that means I can create a Zimbabwe dollar position, Uganda shilling position, Rwanda franc position, Ethiopian birr position. But you have a treasury unit at the back that's trading all these currencies and passing that benefit to you, the fintech. So then as a fintech, you don't have to worry about the exchange movement. You come to me, I guarantee your price, you add your margin and whatever you want to do, and you pass it on to your clients. And I take care of that whole, complicated treasury management position. That's the value that a bank brings to a fintech that just wants to focus on doing what they are good at and not have to worry about a position. The second thing about is the settlement, because everybody's talking about moving money instantly, but not only do you need to add the FX component, but you also need to settle. Because if you are moving money from Kenya to Cameroon, at the end of the day, the ZAF Cameroon needs to be settled and the Kenya shilling to be settled. So you need to be connected to the local clearing systems to be able to do that. That's where the banking license that's what the banking license allows us to do, to be able to not only provide the movement of the money, but to do the FX and to ensure the settlement happens, right? And if, for example, we work with a fintech who needs facilities, for example, to be able to settle, because sometimes you may have dollars seated in one market, but you need to pay Uganda shillings in Uganda. Then I can step in and provide you with a facility to enable you to settle. That's what a bank can do. So in rapid transfer, you've got all of it combined. Ability to move money instantly without having to go through third-party networks. Number two, a treasury function at the back, trading all these currencies. And number three, the settlement capability to ensure that we settle whichever currency when it's needed.
Now, on an international scale, and I know, Leon, you've spoken about Remit-to-Purpose and part of your work in sort of powering up payments across Africa to India. Could you please talk about how that is working, especially for tuition, and I can imagine even treatment and medical purposes? How has that worked, and how is the market responding to this?
Okay, so thank you once again. First, before I even go into Remit-for-Purpose and the India discussion and tuition, I'm actually very happy to be sitting next to Isaac. on this discussion, because we as Flutterwave are a direct beneficiary of what Isaac is talking. We have a partnership with EcoBank for a bank channel opportunity, and we saw what, in fact, I think before even the Africa Continental Free Trade Area discussions and the protocols about PAPs began, EcoBank was already beginning to say, we have a network in 33 countries, how can you leverage it? And I believe that that has also given us an opportunity as Flutterwave to ask the question, we have the capability from a bank channel perspective, how do we drive this solution to the rest of Africa? And I think they answered a thought or an innovation that we had come up with about 2 years ago, and it's beginning to come to life now. And I think even Kenya is one of the pilot markets for the bank channel opportunities for us at Flutterwave in conjunction with EcoBank. So it really speaks into those partnerships that you were asking about and how we leverage, because a lot of people talk about banks versus fintechs, but it's actually banks and fintechs. It's not versus, it's not against, it's and. There are, of course, areas of competition, but at the end of the day, largely collaboration. So, in answer to your question, tuition is something that we came up with just about 2 years ago as well. And again, it was driven by a very specific need. We have tons and tons of Africans who don't study in their countries of origin. And we're not just talking about Africans who have gone to universities in the States or in the UK or in Australia or wherever. We're also talking about Africans who have gone to other African countries to study. We have a lot of Kenyans, for example, who study in South Africa. We have African universities also, like Strathmore University, for example, in Kenya, and USIU have very many Africans from other countries who are students here. And the question was, can we provide a solution that enables payment of school fees? It's as simple as that. Remittance for school fees as a purpose. And that is how tuition was born. Of course, it is something that we are learning in the process, because it's not something that had been done before. And it takes a lot of engagement in terms of integrations with the institutions. You've got thousands and thousands of universities across the world that are saying, okay, so how do we integrate? How do we make sure? Because they have not innovated in technology the way we have. You understand? So even by the time you go to a university and tell them API, they ask you, what is that? So those are some of the challenges that we've seen, but it's good growth for us. And now we have gotten to the stage where we are moving away just not only from tuition, but also to other purposes for remittance. Speaking into India and the question that you've asked, really, again, driven by partnerships. IndusInd Bank has been very supportive in terms of our partnership in India. We are happy to see that we can actually move to Asia as Flutterwave. So it really, we are just banking on Flutterwave, and pun intended when I say banking. We are leveraging partnerships to enter some of these markets. And India has proven as one of those that you can actually leverage a partnership to begin to answer the question of remittance and send money in and out of countries that traditionally we have not seen a lot of those solutions being driven there.
Fantastic. And how will you also, in a way, operate on a global scale? I guess with more than 200 million mobile wallets connected, how is this sort of tech stack actually helped you to do this?
So first, to make it clear, it's not now 200 million wallets. It's over 500 million mobile wallets integrated to our system. And before I answer your question, I also wanted to chime in and add to what you were speaking about cross-border settlements. So as on Afrique, we are a Pan-African organization, meaning we operate in multiple African countries, meaning we are able to collect and disburse in local currencies in different countries. So that has kind of come in to really help us create a very strong FX desk to help us as a PSP to be able to settle our merchants, some of who I have here on the panel with me, across this market and within the African market. So even as PSPs, I think we are looking into ensuring that we can be able to settle our merchants as fast as possible by not necessarily having to move money across different jurisdictions, but by using our presence in multiple countries to balance the flows. And now on to your question. So with our integrations in Africa, so what we are able to offer basically is access to our partners. So you can imagine having a PSP or a payment gateway that gives you the access to over 500 million wallets at a go through a single API integration. So this means that all these 500 million wallets can be able to pay into your business. Now, through these multiple integrations across the different markets, what we are aiming to do is creating access basically for these global merchants. So we are seeing a lot of global merchants from China, from the UK, from Germany, looking into collecting from the African market and being settled outside of the African market. So through our FX offering, we're able to collect local currency here, exchange that, and settle these merchants as quickly as possible in either US dollars, euros, pounds, be it whatever they want, wherever they want across borders.
Interesting. And just back to you, Caroline, and in a way to wrap up, um, are there any global plans, or how do you also operate globally? And I want to be on optimistic, so I wouldn't really ask necessarily what's the plan for the next 3 5 years, but really what should we expect from Paystack in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would talk about it more in the timeline of like 1 to 2 years, because I think we're just at that edge. Like we're learning a lot, as you say, and I think we're just at that edge of cracking some really important problems. So I would say like twofold. I think one is really helping global companies be able to take local payments here on the continent. We're partnering with Stripe to create a global payments and treasury network. So working with them to be able to offer things like Duolingo, Netflix, what have you, and be like for folks in Nigeria to be able to pay with bank transfers in naira, or Kenya with shilling. So like I think that's a really exciting opportunity where you know global companies might not want to set up in every single country, but through that partnership, we're able to give African consumers access to global services. So that's one. The other thing is like there's going to be a world that's not too far away where I can go to Lagos and buy something in store using my M-Pesa wallet. And there's a couple of things that need to be in place for that to happen. And I think that's kind of that next level step where across African countries, you're able to pay with your kind of preferred local payment method, but in whatever country you're in.
Fantastic. And Kirill, I know you just got started, made a great addition to the team with Eric. But as a parting shot, what should we expect from Conduit in the continent?
There's a fun switcher game we're playing here, but um, so I think there's a couple of things. So a number of folks here talked about pretty consumer focused payments, right? So how does Netflix able to collect from consumers in Africa, things like that? We're focused on businesses, and so one of the things that we're already able to do, but we're going to expand on that, is how African businesses pay for their services in the US, for example. So we already started processing payments to Amazon, payments to AWS. I'm sure there's a lot of folks in this room that use, AWS for their hosting, for their tech stack. And it's not always necessarily pretty easy to pay that, right? And so we can do this very cheaply, very efficiently, process a domestic ACH payment to Amazon, to Google Cloud, to a lot of these kind of B2B vendors for African customers. So that's kind of one side of things. The other side of things is payments into Asia, right? So China, Singapore, Hong Kong that I mentioned previously already have local presence in many of those places that we've established for corridors from Latin America. And one of the things we've realized is we can kind of leverage these local presence for African corridors as well. And so you have merchants who are paying, suppliers in China, suppliers in Hong Kong, suppliers in India as well. We've seen this quite a bit. And again, we're going to be able to process those payments much faster, much more efficiently than before. Leveraging some of the things, having local liquidity, for example, available instantly in Hong Kong and being able to trigger that payout as soon as we receive a payment here. Similarly in other places. Um, that's the second big focus for us. And so that includes bank to bank, and that includes Alipay as well in China coming soon.
Fantastic. And Isaac, you've already done quite a bit. Is there still more to come from your end when it comes to remittances and the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think for us, we are strengthening our fintech engagement model so that we can provide our fintechs across our network a one-stop shop from where they can be able to access the entire bank. So, for example, you come here to Nairobi, we've now put a resource here who just does fintechs, and his job is to connect every fintech to everything I've talked about here. Because the bank can be big, can be complicated to access. But having somebody in each of our 34 markets who is the entry point for all fintechs, we believe will enable fintechs to connect to us easier, seamlessly, and be able to help get someone also who understands the fintechs, understands their thinking, understands the speed, the issues around speed, execution, which I think is a big issue for banks. So we're creating those fintech desks across all our 34 countries to be the entry point for fintech. So if you ask me, what we see coming is a huge fintech ecosystem that's actually riding on this Pan-African switch that we have created and really empowering businesses. And hopefully the next, you call them billion-dollar, fintechs, they will be enjoying and seeing them being, helped and being facilitated somehow by EcoBank. And I think our mission would have been accomplished if we see many of those fintechs coming up and growing and doing well and thriving. I think that's going to be a great place.
Yeah, I apart from me wants to skip over Leon because with his two hearts, he might say that what's next is lunch. But so maybe Leon, very quickly, what do you think the ecosystem should expect from Flutter? Then how well you can wrap it up for us.
Okay. Thank you for not skipping me. So, I mean, I keep saying that at Flutterwave, it's a question of seeing what the problem is and finding a solution for that problem. And what I see in the very near future is two things really. First is a more responsive regulatory environment because we need licenses to be able to move money across borders, and each of the countries in Africa are now operating with different licensing frameworks. But if you listen to like what the Africa Continental Free Trade Area said, they said that they are looking at license passporting as one of the things to cover 48 jurisdictions in Africa. If that happens, then I think even EcoBank will be flying high because nobody will be bothering fintechs when they're trying to enter a market. Yeah, it will become a lot more easier. The other thing, of course, now with the PAPS, Pan African Payments, the integrated system, that will be very interesting to see how that plays out and connects both banks and fintechs. And I think that's where we are. But I think the biggest competitor to what we do is not each other. It's not on Africa. It's not Paystack. It's not banks. It's cash. That is still the biggest competitor. That is what still makes remittance the conversation that it has not become, because you still want someone to put money in a bag from the US and carry it to you in Nairobi. And imagine that's still happening. Yeah. And people have to explain, why do you have so much money? So cash is a problem. During COVID, we got to the 16, 17% digital transaction. But now, unfortunately, we've slipped back to the 10 to 12%. So there's still a 90% cash economy that we are fighting against. So the cake is big enough for all of us to actually work towards solving those problems and moving money as much as possible to the digital economy. Those are my insights.
Yeah, so at On Africa, I would say the focus right now for the company is to increase the number of countries that we've already integrated to in Africa. So we want to give the capability for all our partners and all our merchants across the globe to be able to collect from any country in Africa and not just the 45 that we have. We also want to give the capability for remittance companies to terminate into any African market. I want to make it as easy as possible for Leon, who is seated here, to send money to Eswatini as fast as possible, and for him to receive a payment from Mozambique through our channels. That's as simple as I can put it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And a round of applause to our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. So we've been the people who've been sitting between you and lunch, but we are not going to punish you for longer. But yeah, thank you so much for sitting with us and sharing your thoughts and insights. Of course, they're going to be around, and if you have any questions, feel free to engage with them individually. But thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.